Recording in progress.
Here.
Richard Antonetti, engineers.
Here.
Vito,
Here.
Lou Esposito, Bob Marinero, Dave Pope,
Here.
Lou Cavallo. Here. Joe Tuba, Jack McHugh.
Here. I'd like to sit Jack McHugh in for Richard Antonetti, who's absent tonight. Okay, we have, next on the agenda is public participation. Anything in public participation cannot involve matters that are actually on the agenda tonight, such as the public hearing, okay? So it can involve matters that are relevant to the commission that are not on the agenda. So if anybody would like to speak at public participation, please let us know. Okay, nobody seeking to speak at public participation. We'll move to the next matter, which is the minutes. Carol, what minutes are printed?
You can approve the regular meeting September 6th, and you can approve the special meeting October 26th, and you need to table October 4th. You can do it in one motion.
Okay, I'd like to hear a motion in accordance with Carol's recommendations.
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. There's some open seats in the front. Thank you, Cameron. There's anybody standing? Is anybody outside? Everybody seated? Okay, great, thank you. Okay, staff report. Mark, you're on the floor.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, Commission. Just a couple of things to review with you. The zoning regulations, the review of the overview of the zoning regulations is that our consultant is working on final edits. He will share, the target is he'll share them with staff in November. And then the target is to, in December, actually. And then, well, he'll share them with us during November, and the target is to present the draft to the commission in January.
Okay.
We may share with the subcommittee prior to that, get input, since you're most familiar with them, and then that's our target at this point.
Okay.
PA 23-142, dealing with licensed family and group child care homes. So these are changes that the state legislature has made to this issue. We called for a we recommended a public hearing last month for this meeting. But made the decision to hold off on the revisions simply because they're going to be changed within the revised zoning regulations anyway. So rather than duplicate efforts, the thought was to just wait for the new regulations. We have contacted the state and requested an extension to March 31st, 2024.
Have you heard back?
They acknowledge that they received the request.
Oh, okay, thanks. Anything else, Mark?
Affordable housing plan. We've been working, COG has reorganized apparently recently, and so they are providing much more robust services to the municipalities. In working and meeting with our community planner liaison over the past 2 or 3 months, they're helping us to get the affordable housing plan back on track. So we've been working closely with them. At the next meeting that we have with them, which is next week, they're going to review with us a the Watertown Housing Needs Assessment for incorporation into the plan. And so I'm happy to say that that's moving forward as well, and we should have a final draft in the next couple of months.
Okay.
The accessory dwelling units, the subcommittee or the folks that had expressed interest a couple of months ago will make an attempt. The meeting has not taken place, so we'll attempt to get that going again and see if we can make some progress on that. And that's all I have for today.
Thanks, Mark. The next item is Chairman's Report. Actually, a very short thing for the commissioners. I met with Mark this morning, and we agreed to change the format for any revisions that we do to our recommendations for resolutions and for applications, revisions to applications, so that any changes that the staff makes with the developer prior to coming back to the commission are highlighted for the commission, together with a simple explanation of why the change was made, so we could have a more detailed picture of what's going on at the staff level when we make a decision from the commission. Under old business, we have an application for Watertown JRD Properties subdivision for 4 industrial lots and 3 new buildings located at 192 Park Road in Watertown. Attorney, please feel free to go forward.
Is this on? Okay. Good evening.
Good evening.
Commissioners. For the record, my name is Emily Jones, professional engineer
I'm
with Civil
sorry.
One. That's okay.
Sorry, Evelyn.
Equally esteemed, really, it's fine.
Me too.
Professional engineer with Civil One Engineering in Woodbury, here representing the applicant, JRD Properties Watertown LLC, for, as you may recall, a 4-lot industrial subdivision located at 192 Park Road, which is the large parcel of property just after the intersection with Callender Road. You may know it because it's bisected by a large Eversource easement and power lines. Since the previous meeting last month, we did obtain inland wetlands approval at their last meeting. Each lot, when developed, will have to go back before that commission for any regulated activity on the lot individually. We've also coordinated with the Water and Sewer Authority to confirm capacity of the public utilities to serve the project, and I believe they wrote a letter to Mr. Massoud stating that. And then details of those connections and things will have to be worked out with the Water and Sewer Authority for the final use of each lot by the individual lot owner. And then we also got several comments from 2 town engineers, the interim town engineer and Paul Benevich. Both issued us a few comments, and I'm just going to briefly go through them so that everybody's clear on what's happening on each lot and what the next steps are and how we can address some of these comments. So Mr. Lukowski had a few questions regarding detention basins on lots 2, 3, and 4. As you may recall, Lot 1 is where Universal Body and Equipment currently resides, and they have a detention basin on site as well as an existing parking area and utilities. So the new detention basins will be on lots 2, 3, and 4, which are accessed from Park Road. So we sent him the stormwater report. We did design preliminarily detention basins for each of those lots, including routing up to the 100-year storm event with controlled outlet structures, just to make sure that the maximum feasible build-out of those properties could be accommodated on each of those sites. So since each lot is going to be developed potentially at a different time by a different end user, they're not likely to be developed exactly the same way that we showed them on the feasibility plan that we submitted. We had some conversations with wetlands. They were concerned about the size of the building, for instance, on Lot 2, so that may be much smaller, even half the size of what we're showing. But as such, the maximum sort of detention basins are shown on the lots, but they may come in smaller during site plan approval. for that final design. The detention basins will not be maintained by the town, so that will be on each individual plan. They're privately maintained with inspection and maintenance schedules as required. And then he noted that the basin on Lot 4 is actually accidentally graded partially into that Eversource easement. So that just needs to slide up the hill a little bit during final detailed design, which will also allow for easier access and maintenance. So we did show the feasibility for those, but again, during site plan approval, they'll all have to come back for detailed design. There was also a mention of possibly sharing driveways between two of the lots. We have no objection to looking into this. The town engineer mentioned that perhaps lots 2 and 3 could share a driveway. So we had originally looked at this. It may be more likely that I can get lot 2 to share a driveway with the existing driveway on lot 1, just because we're trying to stay out of some of the regulated area probably in the future. But either way, it's fine. So we'll look at that possibility during such time as the site plan approval. Other drainage comments are just to protect the site itself from Park Road drainage, which is fine. The driveways do go down into the sites for the most part, so there'll just have to be lips on those driveways. And then he noted that we didn't show handicap parking, but again, that's something that will come during site plan approval when we know the size and use of each building. There's adequate space on the lot. We size the parking areas for the lots. And then we also got a memo from Mr. Paul Benevich, who I think is on Zoom tonight. And he noted that on the subdivision map, the conservation easement area, which is what we're proposing as open space on Lot 4, should be better defined by leaders branching out, so the labeling of that should be clearer on the subdivision map, which is no issue. We can do that as part of a condition, hopefully. And then the deed reference for the 400-foot wide CLMP easement should be added to the plan, and a note added stating that any proposed activity in this easement is subject to review and approval by the Eversource Corporation. He also notes that the above comments are minor in nature and should not delay any possible motion for the approval of the project, but should be stipulated to in the motion, which we have no objection to. And then we discussed something that's a little bit of a bigger issue that I'd like to discuss with the commission with Mr. Massoud. Section 5.2.5.9 of your subdivision regulations state that commercial and industrial driveways shall be located at least 400 feet from a street intersection. Now, I just want to ask if anybody needs a set of plans and wants to look at it while we're talking about this, raise your hand and I'll hand them out. So the driveway to Lot 4 is proposed at approximately 182 feet from the intersection with Seymour Road. And we respectfully request that the commission waive this regulatory requirement as allowed by section 3.4.10 of the regulations with a 3/4 vote for the following reasons. So the property is located in the industrial zone, and a 70-foot wide strip of land was left clearly on the north side of that and delineated for access into the site. Access from the southern side of Lot 4 on the other side of that residential lot, which is also owned by the same person, is prohibited as there's a 400-foot wide Eversource easement. And historically, we have had a lot of trouble doing any sort of private access through an Eversource easement, especially that requires cuts and fills and things of that nature, changing the grade. The bisection of the property, basically the Eversource easement bisects the entire property, and so the northern half of the site would be entirely inaccessible without accessing it through this 70-foot wide strip. The southern portion of the site is obviously accessible from Park Road, but that whole north side would be unusable if we can't access it. The easement creates a bit of a hardship for the owner and developer to provide access to both sides of that Eversource easement. A residential driveway is allowed to be closer than a commercial driveway to an intersection, but in order to do that, we would have to change the zone of the parcel to residential, which is not in keeping with a lot of the remaining pieces of land on the property. It's a costly and I believe unnecessary endeavor. Additionally, there appears to be some precedent in this area for allowance of commercial driveways within 400 feet because the location of Lot 1's existing drive is somewhat near the intersection of Calendar Road. So that is really sort of the issue that I wanted to present tonight. Everything else was kind of just a summary from the notes we'd taken and everything that's happened between last month and this month. But other than that, I'm happy to answer any questions or explain anything further.
Commissioners, do you have any questions? Danny?
I just have one.
Yeah.
You brought up Eversource
Yep.
several times. Is there any approval you have to get from them to be able to do this, or because you're not doing anything on the right-of-way?
Right, only anything in the right-of-way would we need to obtain approval for them for.
Okay. But nothing's happening in the right-of-way, correct?
Actually, a tiny corner of the driveway to Lot 4 is in a portion of that, so we'll have to contact them for that, yeah.
Okay.
What's the sight line, Ms. Jones?
So I don't have it exactly from each driveway or particularly Lot 4?
From Lot 4?
Lot 4. I'm just looking to see. I don't have it noted on the plans, so I would have to get that for you.
It's a relatively straight road at that point,
Yes,
though, right?
yes. It's an adequate site distance, so we didn't do profiles or put
Okay.
them on the plan.
Okay,
So I
that's-
typically will
all right.
do that if it looks like it's an
All
area
right,
of
that's
concern.
good with that. Any other commissioners, any questions?
Through the chair, you obviously have done your homework. That section on Lot 4, that could be a problem with Eversource. If that is a problem with Eversource, is that going to be, kill that Lot 4, or is it some way you can go around that?
So it could harm the potential for access to Lot 4, in which case Lot 4 may just have to be combined with some of the other lots and lose it. But there's no grade change because it's right at the intersection with Park Road. So typically Eversource is generally okay with like a paved apron in that corner of the area. It's as far from the power lines as it could possibly be. It's right on the edge, and there's no change in grade, which is Eversource's big issue is a lot of times when you have a change in grade within their easement, they're very careful about the height of their poles and their lines because in the summer especially, those lines can elongate quite a bit and droop quite a bit further towards the ground. So if you're proposing fill or cut in there, they can have an issue with that. But we've done small items like this with Eversource before, and I don't anticipate an issue. So I'm still proposing the driveway there. But not cutting right through the whole easement under the power lines and everything that could cause a big issue.
I have a question through the chair. On Lot 4,
Yeah.
this lot up here, is there a home here? Is this lot cut out from the rest of the,
It is, and it was owned by the same people that owned this other part of, this other property. They're all owned by the same,
right, but there's a house here, right? And you don't show it on here, but there is a home in this lot that's cut out?
I don't know if it's still there or not. I'm not 100% sure if it's still there.
It's shown.
It's shown
Excuse
there's
me,
a
yeah,
home?
It's, you see, it says John Paul Muscaluk, 334 Park Road.
On the front lot?
So that's
Lot
in the
4.
back lot.
In the back of
yeah.
Lot 4.
Yeah.
The house is
I don't know
hashed
if there's
out.
anything on that front lot.
There's no.
But on
Tommy
this front lot-
Tommy's house, yeah, that's right. It's in there, it's not shown, but
It's not shown, right?
Yeah,
But
he's
there's a
back-
house, so this lot 4 is going between two residential properties,
Right.
correct?
Yep, yes.
And how large is the actual parcel where the building is going on?
So it is, let me see, I have it here.
Yeah, no, I know
That
I
parcel
know
is
that.
the largest of the four.
No, I get that it's large, but I'm
pieces.
saying where the actual building is going.
So that building shown is a 12,000 square foot footprint, so I possibly around an acre or so.
And then all the rest is open space primarily, right?
Correct, yeah.
And
And
the,
topographically, it's difficult to access sort of the back of this site. But let me,
One other
Grab
question
my
through the
phone.
chair. What are the actual setbacks that you have for the residential properties on each side of you?
Oh, these are not to scale. I would have to look at the zoning regulations to see what those setbacks are. Because this is not to
Do you know,
scale.
Mark, if they meet the setbacks on those lots?
Setbacks from the property line?
Yeah, so from where they're proposing, the two residential homes, it looks so tight in there, I'm just curious if they meet the setbacks for parking and driveways and,
I'm not understanding, you. For the houses themselves or for the proposed buildings?
yeah, so lot 4 here
Yep,
is in between two residential homes. It
Right.
looks so tight, I didn't know if they meet the regulations for the setbacks for driveway and parking and et cetera. It doesn't call it out, so I don't know if it
Right.
does or not. Lots 2 and 3 are fine,
yeah.
but lot 4 looks really, really tight.
We
So the other-
viewed the layouts as potential layouts, not cast in stone, so to speak. But our cursory review, I don't recollect offhand either, but they appeared to be sufficient, but we realized that the final placement of any of those buildings will
Be on the
have to,
site plan?
will be on the site plan and will have to meet any applicable guidelines, setbacks.
Yeah,
Okay.
I believe it's a 50-foot building setback and then a smaller parking setback for the front yard. And then I'm not sure what the rear yard is, but again, yes. So tonight's application is strictly for the subdivision to create these 4 lots. And then when the properties come back for site plan approval, if there's some type of use that they need to adjust the size or location of the building, they would do that at that time.
I thank you.
Quick question through the chair. Those 2 properties that Louis was just talking about, the residential properties, are
Yep.
those owned by the applicant?
Yes.
They
yes.
are? Yeah.
They're owned by the owner, yeah. Who is also the applicant under an LLC, I guess, so
the owner's
yes.
given a-
Right,
a
okay.
license. All right, okay.
Yeah.
Wait, excuse me, so
thank
you're
you.
saying those 2 homes are owned by which owner?
The owner of the subject piece of this subdivision parcel.
Okay.
Thank you.
I was under the impression that the one to the right was actually not owned by them, nor the one to the left, but I could be mistaken. Those other lots that are
Yep.
not included in are not owned by the owners. Am I mistaken with that?
I think they are, but I guess I would have to double check if you, I mean, I think they are on the record, land records.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right, thank you.
Are going to some of them. Any other questions, commission members? Okay. Well, I would like to hear several motions on this if, at this time. One of them would be the waiver of the requirement under our regulations of the distance from of a curb cut for a driveway from an existing public street, and the other one would be for the approval of the subdivision. Can I hear a motion?
I make a motion to give them the 180 feet on the sight line. That road is straight through
Okay.
there, and there's no real big hills, so I don't think it's an issue.
I'll second the motion.
Can we couple that motion with an approval a motion for the approval of the subdivision?
I make the motion to couple it together and approve them
Okay,
both.
all right,
And I'll second it.
okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries, subdivision's approved.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
We'll see you for site plan approval.
Oh,
We're just approving that they could break it up in 4 parcels. Yeah, I agree.
Why can't I?
All right. The next matter on the agenda is continued public hearing on a proposed text amendment for the 30-acre age-restricted housing development. Attorney Pillacy.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman,
evening.
members of the commission and staff. Franklin Pillacy on behalf of the applicant. At the last public hearing session, we requested a continuance of the public hearing, keeping it open for purposes of meeting with zoning officer and making a few adjustments to the application as recommended by the zoning officer. We have had that meeting. We have made those changes to the satisfaction of the zoning officer, and we would ask that the public hearing be closed tonight, and you, if you find it in your discretion to approve it tonight, we would appreciate that.
All right, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's the quorum. Okay. Do I hear a motion to approve this amended proposed text amendment to add to the 30-acre age-restricted housing development?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? It's approved.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Excuse me. All right, the next item on the agenda is the application by Solely Engineering for WPH Holdings, proposed text amendment. This is a continued public hearing. I assume that most of the people here are this particular. Let me take a moment to review the rules for a public hearing with everybody. Please turn off or silence all your mobile devices. I will call on an applicant first to make their presentation and answer any questions from the commission. When the presentation of the applicant is complete, I will solicit comments from the public, okay? I will recognize speakers from the audience. When called upon, please approach the podium, state your name and address clearly for the record. Address your comments to the chairman only. The commission doesn't have an obligation to respond to any questions that you have. You can address, the commission can just remain silent on it. You can make your presentation. We may impose time limits on speakers. There's a lot of people here, so initially I'm not going to impose a time limit. I would request that everybody try to keep it within 3 or 4 minutes. If it gets a little bit longer, I'll kind of give you a nudge to hurry it up or get to your point. I don't want to particularly stop anybody from their opinion, but please don't repeat something that somebody else has said, because we really, you're on the record, the commission's heard your statement, and it's being considered, somebody else's statement on the same issue, okay? Please, no derogatory statements, no statements that that aren't, other than those are related specifically to the issues before the commission, all right? I'd like to keep this hearing as civil as possible, and we would appreciate that. All right. Thank you. It's nice to see the public come to these hearings. We'd like to give everybody an opportunity to speak if they want to, and we appreciate your participation. All right.
Mr. Chairman, can I interrupt?
Yes.
Do you have a problem getting out or parking on the back? No. Oh, I thought you came back in. I didn't know.
There are seats available if you would take a seat. If you'd like to take a seat, I mean, we do have seats available if anybody wants to sit down.
I thought you might have been blocked in or something. Sorry.
One other matter I'd like to talk about here is that while the applications are pending before the commission, communication with commissioners should only be in this public hearing venue. You may communicate concerns or ask questions of staff outside of the hearing during normal business hours. Okay, thank you. All right. Applicant, please come forward.
Mr. Chair, Commission, guests, staff, Brian Atherton, Northeast Investment Realty, located at 45 South Main Street, Newtown, Connecticut. Also a principal in WPH Holdings, Newwood Road and Bunker Hill. Our engineer is moments away, was caught in a little traffic, but I wanted to alert the commission that we did submit submit a economic development package to EDC. That was one of the feedback pieces that we received from the commission. I'm happy to report we did not share, and I'm looking for direction of the commission. We did not share detailed numbers with respect to quantitative analysis with school-age children, the cost, the benefit, the tax revenue. We submitted on October 19th. We are invited back, which I think is a good thing, on November 16th, and we prepare to, like tonight, answer every question and every comment and be very thorough so that the guests and the commission can understand every detail, because it's a very complex project. So I just wanted to alert the commission that we were active and just alert the commission that Mr. Soley should be here momentarily. But if there's anything that you have questions with regard to me, as the consultant, as the owner, I'd be happy to answer that now, Mr. Chair.
Does any members of the commission at this stage of the proceeding have any questions for the applicant through Mr. Atherton? Yes.
At the last meeting, it was brought up about how the land may have potential pollution on it. Was that looked into? Was there anything that came of that?
Yes. As understood that a deal cannot be financed to be developed without having clean environmentals, but me being someone who's very interrogative, and I want to get to the bottom of why this was around conversation around town many years ago. And in the report with EDC, pages 20 to 22, does state the reasoning. So apparently, and I will say this because I think it will answer the question, where Shaker Hyundai is today was the dairy, farm dairy. And there were, and I'm not, I deal with enough environmental, Connecticut has its own environmental challenges with being a very slow state, and we understand the law very well and the regulations, and they're actually getting harder and worse, and not in a positive, but that's another DEP discussion. But there was some plume of something. Now keep in mind, that is across the street from Commercial Street. That is, you'd have to go through two buildings, and a matter of fact, the developer, Heritage Development, carved a large piece of land, and I have it graphically here, and be happy to. We didn't want to be out of order with sharing with the public and the commission detailed, I would say, confidential numbers. So I'm not sure how to proceed, but you'll see the large piece of this development was carved off many years ago when Heritage Village, because they didn't want to deal with. They had their own phase one. They didn't want to deal with the conjecture or the rumor. They wanted Heritage Village to be a success, like we want this development to be a success. So they wanted to nip it in the bud and really just say, okay, great. And a matter of fact, with the commission's permission, there's a little graphic here that has where Shaker Hyundai is and has the actual site location, and you'll see a before and after, and you see that yellow portion right there. And I'd be happy to, just bring it closer to you, but that is the portion that was sold prior to the final approval of Heritage Village development in order to eliminate that conjecture.
Whereabouts is that Whereabouts is that parcel located?
So that parcel is the piece of land that is closest to, see it right here. These are the buildings that are on Commercial Street. So these are the back of the buildings, and Commercial Street is actually in front of that. So you'd have to actually go through, because remember, the Shaker's Hyundai is on the other side of Commercial Street. So you'd have to actually go through the street in Plume. But Once again, that parcel, when they carved it off, it's in different ownership. It has nothing to do with this development whatsoever. So if that is an issue, that is not an issue of ours.
Okay. So have you completed any Phase 1 or Phase 2, or?
Yes, yes.
Both of them?
Phase 1, it's undeveloped land, there's no need for a Phase 2.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no suggestion, which is unusual, because in the industry, there's always a suggestion for more testing.
Right.
But it was yes.
Okay. Thank you.
So Mr. Soli has arrived, and I don't know if you'd like for me to, we're going to continue with EDC and go back on the 16th, and we're happy to share all of this information or any of it. I just didn't know what was, we have it all tonight. So I'll rely on Mr. Soli and his guidance on proper protocol.
Okay. Thank you.
Good evening, members of the commission. You can stay up here, Brian. I think you're going to be next. My apologies. I thought there were a number of agenda items before us, but clearly we started promptly at 7. So my sincerest apologies. I think we're pulling up a presentation we had emailed to staff today. And what we really wanted to do was obviously run through a lot of the comments and discussions that were raised at the last hearing. But also we wanted to give Brian an opportunity to provide some presentation material on a number of the items that we discussed. Sure. Kevin Soley. I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of Connecticut with Soley Engineering. Hopefully we can get that PowerPoint pulled up and.
So as a general, from what the licensed engineer said, I'll be sharing more of this information with you tonight. So I just wanted to kind of give you a general overview while it's loading up. We prepared a projected tax revenue that EDC, when we met with EDC, we wanted to make sure that EDC was receptive of the conversation, and they were, but they wanted some answers. They wanted to know what is the potential impact on school-age children, on public schools. It's public knowledge and public records that there's been articles and that schools have across certain areas have increased in occupancy quickly due to COVID, a short data clip from what many experts say, as opposed to the 20-year trend of declining population. So we created a revenue model that created projected revenue. So if you want to, you wanted to, great. So I think what's interesting to note about Watertown, and keep in mind that Watertown is very unique in the fact that there is a large amount of basic employment. And basic employment is what really drives a market to generate overall jobs. Because remember, the proper community starts like a pyramid. Industrial, manufacturing, and office generate employment that people live. They want to live close to their office. Now is a little different because there's telecommuting, but generally that pyramid, you live close to where you work or somewhat close. We don't like to commute an hour or two away. And then you shop close to where you live. So the whole real estate model has been modeled around that sort of pyramid. And of course it's changed. Amazon has changed. Obviously telecommuting has changed. But basic employment you can't change because what Watertown has is basic employment of 1,690 employees. And the definition of basic employment is the amount of consumption that is in excess. Your production is in excess of what you consume as a local economy. It's not a service provider that's shifted around for one person. I'm a carpenter by trade. It's not my carpentry skills that are used to renovate a home. That's a service job. That is not a generator like a manufacturer that exports their product. And that generates a multiplier effect. So that's what forecasting demand and forecasting need for housing, that's what it's all about, is having that employment driver and really understanding. But I just wanted to point out, because as we talk about, whenever you have that, what's called the location quotient, whenever it's over 1.0, you have what's called basic employment. So you have 227 manufacturing basic employees, you have 261 for retail, you have 80 for information. And you can really see how some of the categories are really unique, like education services. That's something that is greater than what is consumed in the area. That's private school. Private school is what exports that knowledge throughout the world. So just want you to think about that, because that is how we and how population impact on school-age children, most important. So can we, so we talked about 227 basic employees for manufacturing, and we got that information, which, from the previous slide. We don't need to be bored down by the formulas, but they're here. I'm sorry, previous slide. So those manufacturing basic employee jobs that are created are going to create, from this project, 1,525 total jobs that are non-basic and basic. So from the industrial development of the new wood portion of this development is going to generate projected approximately 1,525 total jobs, of which the previous slide stated approximately 227, I believe, basic employment jobs. Because remember, once again, this is manufacturing. There's been a lot of people, there's 12 categories, and I'm sure some in the audience can probably correct me. There's many, many, many categories of warehouse, distribution, light, heavy, last mile, cross-dock, manufacturing, high ceilings. Today, it's all about loading product one rack higher. It's not about turning into an Amazon facility, because you need 1 million square feet. You need something similar. Now, not for the last mile. The last mile can squeeze in 50,000 square feet of Amazon, 80,000. They're already in the market, everyone. This is not an Amazon distribution center. This is not something that's specific right now, because this is such a large project. This is, from an economic standpoint, this is something that is not generated by one interested party. This is overall consensus in the market that we need more manufacturing space. And you see what's happened in really analyzing this market and the basic employment. What's happened to a lot of your manufacturing buildings is they've been kind of squeezed out by the car dealers. They've been sort of used as shops, prep shops, body shops, whatnot. They're really not allowing the true growth that Watertown can have. So this is exciting to report this, and this is part of what will be, once again, the submission to the economic development. So next slide. So interesting to note here, this, 3.4 people currently commute walking to work. We're all about development. What makes development work economically, functionally, from a flow, is having the linkages. It's all about the linkages, close to where if you could shop, you could work, you could live and play all around the same place, but have different scenery and not have to be bothered with traffic and driving and all the things that we're not supposed to do in the future. I'm told we're supposed to have an electric car by some manufacturers. It's forced on us in so many years. This is what's changing. So, this is very important information, and it just shows you a little bit of how commuters and their commute to work and the time that they travel to and from their home to work currently in the marketplace. Next slide, please. So, a couple questions. Please, this information, once again, has not been submitted to economic development and will be, and they understand, and we mentioned to them that we were pleased to be able to present to planning and zoning, and we mentioned that we're continuing to work with them. But we did want to just preface this information by saying this is projected. This is a large project that will take a long time. This is not something that is going to happen in anyone's very near future. There's Army Corps of Engineer that has to happen. There's each of the developments have to go through this commission with specifics that will be extensive in understanding that every piece of it works with the way it's supposed to work. But from a general standpoint, there's been a lot of talk about what's the cost, what's the projected rental rate. Now keep in mind, this is just the market information. I'm not telling you this is kind of what it is right now. You can't find good product. I'm sure many of you have heard. There's a slide in here talking about the housing crisis right now and the importance of the linkages of a location of a residential community. We're kind of jumping around, so I'm going with the flow. We're on slide 10. But these are the projected target rental rates as of right now. That very well may change next year. And we hope that it does, because 8% interest rates are not good. We hope that that changes. That changes a lot of things right now. So does this. This housing crisis is not helpful for anyone. There's a couple slides earlier that are interesting to note, and if I may ask to jump around, I'm not navigating, but I wanted to just also, because this is the rental rates that we're targeting, and I guess we can continue, because the revenue that this project from a tax perspective generates is in the following slide. But since we missed the first couple, now we're with the 12. So this slide talks, we missed 11. This slide talks about the 2- and 3-bedroom current occupants in all of Connecticut. Where are they living? Well, you look at the 2 columns here. The left column are owners, the right column are renters. You look at the blue, which is 1-bedrooms. The majority, 40 to 41% of Connecticut's residents are living in rentals. The 1-bedrooms, excuse me. The blue line on the owner side are approximately 20 to 23%. The yellow line are the 2-bedrooms. This just notes that the majority of the 1- and 2-bedroom people in Connecticut in general are living in apartment dwellings as opposed to, and we all know that. We all know that, we see high school-age children in some of the next slides with people when you're actually an occupant in a multifamily. Well, how could you be an occupant? Well, you can own a 3-family, and you can live in one of the floors. That's classified as housing stock, and that is usually a lesser impact on the school systems, or a lesser impact on school-age children. So this dives right into talking about school-age children and the potential impact on Watertown's public school children. Very important to note, you see the columns here, which breaks down the number of public school children in different structured types of housing. So we have the first, column all, second column single-family detached. Look at the red and the blue columns there. The blue at the second box, single-family detached. Owner occupied is in blue, and renter occupied is in red. Now, much higher than the multifamily, as you notice, the blue is 0.14, and that is 0.14 children per person, public school children. So that's how these charts are, or this data is categorized, is for every person in a multifamily dwelling, which is the far column on the right, that owns their multifamily generates 0.14 school-age children. Now, what this slide does not do, and the next slide does do, is break down the different types of multifamily, because as I mentioned earlier, there are different types of multifamily, and it's important to note each of them have a different impact on the school-age children. So now, this is a U.S. slide. Connecticut is different in different markets now. If you talk to several different land use attorneys, some towns are having problems with school-age children. Majority, 85% of them are not. They're still considering closing schools or housing students at other schools during large construction projects, HVAC replacements, HVAC installations for schools that have never had them. This is very common. 20 years of vacancy in our schools should be noted that we've had a very short term, and there's an article that went out in Watertown on the 10% increase in the high school, and in August, the article, and I can cite that. But that's very short-term data. The data shows that we're getting older, we're staying in Watertown longer, but we also, the school generation is temporary, or the population generation generated from COVID was very robust in a very short time period, and was because Connecticut was open when other states were not open for business. As the Connecticut Association of Realtors deemed to have Connecticut open, which is the best thing that we did, because we do have some new population, which we did need in the marketplace, quite frankly. I'm not saying specifically, but in general, because Connecticut has had 20 years of no population growth. And that has been the problem with our schools historically, understanding that they do have something different today. Now, this category, or breaking down the multifamily, interesting to note, the all first column, single-family detached, single-family attached, manufactured homes, all multifamily homes, multifamily 2 to 4 unit. That's your that's a typical 2-unit, 3 multifamily generates 0.35. When an owner owns a 3-family, it generates 0.35 school-age children, as opposed to if they rent, generates 0.30. So this breaks down, as you notice, the larger the development, the far right column is multifamily 20-plus units, which are typically newer stock. There are some, there's not too many larger apartment developments, and when the newer ones tend to be 20 units or larger, and that generates the least amount of school-age children, 0.16 for owner-occupied or occupied units, and then all housing units, multifamily means it includes vacancy as well. That's why it's a little bit less. This slide, the last slide did not include vacancy. All housing units, it differentiated between tenant and owner. This slide is occupied versus all housing stock, which does bring in the vacancy, understanding we have no vacancy today, but there is some vacancy. So the next slide should break down basically Connecticut in general. You see the red, how we highlighted the demand for school-age children or public school children in Connecticut for all of the housing stock that we have. And we have a 0.12. Unfortunately, Connecticut, as an aggregate, does not break it down, 1, 2s, et cetera, et cetera. So on the next slide, and that is, once again, 0.12 children for every person. So there's a renter-occupied units. So you see all 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom. 1 bedroom is 0.07. Once again, 10 people generate less than 1 school-age children or public school children for a 1-bedroom dwelling, 0.7 to be exact. 2 bedrooms is 0.35. Of course, the 2 bedrooms generate a larger number. Interesting to note, the data that we have, think about it, data is always backwards looking. It's usually wrong, or it's usually what we understand, data shows us that we're usually wrong, and there are many leaders in many municipalities in Connecticut, and Trumbull, Connecticut, and Rena Bacalar, one of them, who I just was with last at Trumbull Appreciation Day, who's had over 1,000 units of multifamily developed in their community with moratoriums. And the importance of housing is very, very, very intimate to me because I lived in a multifamily as I was growing up. Very important part of my life that allowed me to own something, collect some rent, qualify for the mortgage, maybe have some tax advantage. So it's very important to me. But understand that Trumbull, Connecticut, as a case study, has gone out, and there's even a public article stating that per the projections that are exactly these projections, the demand on this for school-age children was almost half of what they thought it was going to be. Because what's happening today, once again, this data does not have all of the COVID-baked data in. We're using our homes as offices. We're using our homes more and more as a commercial office, or an office, and a separate room, and a Zoom room, and a private room. And I know my wife, we actually had to buy a larger home. We had to do it through COVID, during COVID, after she was told she had to work from home and operate webinars for her clients at home with 2 kids. So that data, with working from home, with the 2 bedrooms, we didn't mess around with that. We used the data that says 2 bedrooms are 2 bedrooms, and that's it. But you're gonna see in 2 or 3 years, the data that includes the COVID aftershock is going to have less school-age children than the 0.35 for a 2-bedroom unit due to majority, approximately 50% of these are rented by people who want to use these as an extra room for an office or professional purposes. So we did the calculations for economic development. One of the questions that they had was, what is the potential impact as far as numbers of public school children? Very important to us. We took that to heart. We cranked the numbers, we did the right calculations, and it's going to be less than 40, 39.2 students to be exact. And we believe it will be less, but we're not going to guess. This is from the hard data. So under 40, and the following slides show how those 40 are correlated into potential revenue and expenses. Now, understanding, just like a lot of data. There's 4 different data sets if you look at Watertown schools, the cost per school child. We did not want to, throw out a number that was biased, because if you look, there are several different numbers for the cost for Watertown to educate each of their school children. We took a national average. Why we did that is because we didn't want to create any sort of controversy. The town could tell us what they would like us to use for the cost, and we'd be happy to use those numbers in extrapolating all of our data. But it was just, there were 3 different numbers that you find when you do the research, and we didn't want to put any sort of, we used a federal number and a national number that is to be adjusted per market. It used to be 16,000, 17,000, 18,000, 14,000. It could be around there. It could be 20,000. In some communities, it's 14,000. So really, we just selected a number that was unbiased, and that's the cost of educating those 39.2 people, or students, I should say, excuse me. The next slide shows the potential revenue from the tax revenue from this project. Understand, the Newwood Road project, and some of the commissioners we had the pleasure of walking and answering any questions that they had. This is a large project, and this has been carefully thought out to take all conservation measures, all buffer measures. We're going to hear later from Mr. Soley, all neighbors, understanding the importance of the conservation from a wetland standpoint, not trying to impact. Someone could have put roads through different parts of these properties that impacted much more wetlands and possibly not have to go through Army Corps of Engineer. We didn't want to do that. We wanted to make a straight cut with the road where the road already currently is, where one exists, to try to keep that conservation efficiency. But from a tax perspective, this project is going to be broken up into 4 phases. That is the Newwood Road Industrial Project. The first phase is to get the road in with the first manufacturing of the first company. Now keep in mind, it could be one company for lot 1. It could be multi-tenant. These buildings are not designed to be distribution buildings. They don't have the distribution mechanics that are needed for excess storage of all the trailers that come along with the distribution. I mean, there's hundreds of trailers at these big distribution networks, and they have parking lots that are meant specifically, that are larger than the buildings. And this is not that. They won't fit on this. They're not going to work on this. This is for the local company that WPH Holdings owns, the Shelter Rock Business Park in Danbury, Connecticut. They own in North Haven, Connecticut, 222 Universal, 200,000 square feet right off of 91. You can see it from 91. They own 7 buildings in the marketplace, equivaling about this square footage. They're local. Bill, who could not be here tonight, who has been in front of you before, he's a developer, promised an architect to show a project in Kent, so he cannot be here. But this project is 4 phases. So understand, it's not going to generate this dollar amount right out of the gate. It's going to take some time. The road has to go in. Army Corps has to be done. This revenue, though, generates projected $1.578 for the town of Watertown. And the cost, if we recall from the school, and we broke it down from the industrial development and from the apartment development. And that's projected. And how do we get that number? We based it on comps. And we based it on other properties in the marketplace. So we used the Iron Mountain, for example, on Commercial Street as a 93,000 square foot building. That's one of your stewards, one of your companies in the marketplace that is a resident. That tax is about $1 a square foot. We base these numbers on what is a large aggregate of $1 a square foot. Now, some properties are 90 cents, some are $1.10. Industrial properties, that is, not residential, not nothing. That's just pure per square foot, and that's how we base it in the industry, and that's how that that's how that 767,500. That is $1 per square foot on an annual basis, as that is what the other inventory is in town. So there was no That's how we chose that number. There was no, we're not giving any guidance. We're just saying that this is what and we did supply a comp, or I'm sorry, we did supply the Iron Mountain property card in the presentation. And the next slide just shows the net generated is $990,000, close to $1 million. Obviously, we're excited to present this to economic development. Economic development was excited for the project, but they, as I mentioned earlier, they wanted hard fact data. And we understand that, and we didn't want to be, we weren't unprepared, we were totally prepared, but we didn't want to, we wanted to get before this commission, we wanted to make sure we did it the right way. So we're excited to get back on in this month, in November, and we'll report back to this commission, Mr. Solly, as we need to. And I didn't know if there's, Mr. Chair, if there's any questions you have of me, or?
Just a few more slides, Brian, related to I think you mentioned it, regarding the environmental concerns, so.
Mr. Solly is not an LEP, but he is a traffic engineer. I'm just saying, so LEP is a licensed environmental professional. I'm sorry, that's, I am not one, but I speak with them all day because in commercial real estate, Connecticut has what they call the Transfer Act, and it's sunsetting right now, and it's in legislation. There's been legislation passed in Hartford, and there's regulations being written right now that make development of existing properties that have environmental issues even more difficult. It's called an RSR release-based standard as opposed to what is the CTA, the Connecticut Transfer Act. So even though I am not an LEP, what I come in front of you is probably more experience than anyone that has been in front of you regarding environmental issues. That upper red box, so to speak, is the property that Heritage Development did not include, and it shows it on the next slide, if I may, graphically. That's how this property, so the after is what we're developing right now. It does not include any of that yellow. I don't know who owns that yellow. It may have been back to the original owner or back to the companies that are there, but that is not what we own. That's not our property. We own what is everything but that yellow portion. So once again, in the next slide does show, as I mentioned earlier, does show graphically the property that was the State Farm Dairy and is Shaker's Family Hyundai there. And you can see, as I mentioned, it's on the other side of Commercial Street. So it actually have to plume through what is that parking area across the street, across the abutter's property, or the adjacent property across the street, and then through that property. But the land portion, and that arrow is not exactly where the land was bifurcated as far as the previous slide to show you that that portion was removed. But those property, or the strip, that yellow box is just what you're seeing right there, that little, I call it a divot because it's a lower piece of property and it's a hill that goes down from the back of all the properties in Commercial Street and goes to a little stream right there, or a little what could be a culvert. So that was eliminated, and that whole conversation was something that was happening many years ago, but that property has been developed, so that property would have obviously had to go through any of the typical LEP or environmental protocol that the state of Connecticut requires. So this is, once again, the development split up or broken, bifurcated. There's no connectivity, and I'll just let Mr. Solly continue, and thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Brian. Again, for the record, Kevin Soley, licensed professional engineer. So, at the last meeting, we heard a lot of great comments from commission members and also from the public. So one of the things we did is obviously we wanted to clarify some of the concerns regarding the environmental. I think Brian has done a good job of summarizing that the environmental issues associated with, the previous discussions were not subject to this property. But there were a lot of concerns raised about, what's being proposed and how we're providing protections and additional standards to ensure that we won't have an adverse impact to the surrounding areas, and really to create an overall plan development district that has additional standards that really give this commission teeth and the ability to ensure that any application that comes before you in the future is built in with a number of components that are really needed to ensure that protection. And again, as we stated at the last hearing, this application is simply the first step of many. What we're proposing is the establishment of this, Bunker Hill Plan Development District standards. And if this master plan is approved, each individual lot will have to come before this commission for a more detailed analysis and review. And these standards would apply to any and all future applications. So what we've done is we've added some additional language in bold and italics, and that's what's shown up on the screen. So a number of these were included in our previous application, but I'm just going to focus on the additional standards we added. So for number 5, we had previously established that, we want to have 10% of the units be deeded affordable. We just provided some additional clarification there. Minimum of 10% of residential units shall be restricted to a rent at an affordable rate to persons with an income not exceeding 80% median income for the town of Watertown, or statewide median income, whichever is least, based on data published by U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development as an effect on the first day of a signed lease. And that's pretty standard language that goes into any and all affordable housing projects. Again, what we want to do is we want to create a stock of workforce housing that can really make some additional housing opportunities for those folks who may need some of that support. Number 6, we put in some provisions to really control the unit mix. Maximum 2 bedrooms per dwelling unit. Maximum 65% of total units shall be limited to 2 bedrooms. Minimum of 35% of total units shall be limited to 1 bedroom. Now, this is an important component because, as Brian mentioned in his presentation before, the real school-age children generation happens once you get into that 3-bedroom unit. 1-bedroom units and 2-bedroom units traditionally and empirically don't typically generate a significant amount of school children. We wanted to ensure that this proposed development would not include any 3-bedroom units. It would be limited to just 1 and 2 bedrooms, and there'd be restrictions in terms of how many of those units could be 2 bedrooms. What we've proposed is really consistent with current market trends and what residential developers need to have for a mix to create positive, successful projects. So this is something that we wanted to provide some additional clarity on. In number 7, we had previously established a maximum building height of 60 feet, but there was some concern regarding, 60 feet, you could have a 6-story building. We certainly aren't looking to do that. We wanted to provide some additional restrictions for those residential units and provided clarity that residential buildings shall be limited to 3 stories. Obviously, we would be looking for that 60-foot height for some of the industrial warehouse space. As Brian mentioned and we mentioned before, a lot of that, from a warehouse standpoint, needs some additional height to really maximize the storage capabilities per square foot. But we did provide that restriction in terms of that, or clarification that residential structures would be capped at 3 stories. Moving down to number 12, again, these are the new components we've proposed in response to last month's meeting. Maximum coverage for residential lots, maximum building coverage of 15%, maximum impervious coverage of 25%, and maximum floor area ratio of 40%. These are consistent with some of the other underlying regulations that exist in the town, and we wanted to provide additional clarity for that. For industrial lots, maximum building coverage of 40%, maximum impervious coverage of 65%, and maximum floor area ratio of 50%. Again, this is consistent with what's allowed in the adjacent industrial zone because we wanted to create consistency and, again, provide more specificity in terms of what can be allowed in future site plan applications. And then number 14, we got a lot of, we heard the residents and the concerns regarding, the potential impact to some of the residential zones that surround us. And while our initial application was simple in the fact that it required building setbacks that were consistent with other industrial zones, we wanted to ensure and provide that there was a robust buffer required for any residential uses or any residential zone properties. So what we've proposed is to add a 500-foot buffer between any impervious surface at industrial development and any residential structure on Middlebury Road. So if you go to the next slide, this really highlights how considerable of a buffer we are proposing. So we looked at the residents along Middlebury Road. We wanted to, it was never our intent to provide only a 35-foot building setback, that's again just what was allowed in the underlying zones. So what we've done is with this addition, we've created a requirement that we are now required to provide a 500-foot buffer for many of those structures on Middlebury Road. And again, what this also shows is that there's quite a bit of, dense vegetated woods, and this will ensure that, what we do propose won't have any adverse impact on the surrounding residential areas. Next slide. So these are a number of other components that we added. Number 17, all proposed light fixtures to be dark sky compliant. Again, that's a design methodology where you have, recessed fixtures that reduces glare and ensures that you don't have any impact on the surrounding areas. Number 18, off-site signage for industrial parks shall be in accordance with the town zoning regulations. We wanted to make sure that was just reinforced and consistent. Public right-of-ways are permitted and shall not exceed 3,000 feet. Again, as we've discussed at the last hearing, we would be proposing to subdivide this property to extend Newwood Road into the property, create a cul-de-sac, and essentially create 4 industrial lots which could be developed in the future, all subject to additional site plan review. Number 22, a noise study shall be required that demonstrates compliance with the Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection and the Watertown Noise Ordinance for any industrial developments in this zone. We discussed this at the last hearing. We think any future site plan application for any individual building or structure needs to include that noise study. It needs to establish what those background ambient noise levels are and demonstrate that it will not create, will not increase that noise level beyond what's permissive under the Watertown regulations and under the State Department of Energy and Environmental Protection regulations. Number 23, in addition to the traffic information required by Section 8, the applicant shall include a traffic study in accordance with subsection 9.4. Again, any future application within this design district would be required to include a comprehensive traffic study for that proposed site and obviously how it affects the balance of the park. So we wanted to just further reinforce that this is something that's required. As we discussed at length at the last hearing, our traffic study that has been prepared is based on what we anticipate these buildings to be, and we discussed at the last hearing that there are a number of different industrial uses, and each industrial use has a different trip generation associated with it. Based on what we're anticipating, we believe that these would fit more of a general warehouse type use. But again, if any use is proposed or wants to be developed here, there would need to be an additional traffic study that explicitly establishes what the anticipated trip gen is for that specific use. And again, as we also discussed, this project would meet the purview of the Connecticut Department of Transportation, so they would be reviewing these applications as they come in and the overall traffic associated with it. Number 24, floor plans and elevations for all proposed buildings are required as part of this future applications. Number 25, in addition to the lighting information required by Section 8 and Section 33, the application shall include a photometric plan. Again, we just want to reinforce that we're able to provide and demonstrate the proposed lighting will not have any adverse impact off the, outside of the developed area and won't have any impact to the surrounding residents or even any of the natural resources on the property. Number 26, snow storage areas shall be shown on the site plan in accordance with Section 58.10 of the zoning regulations. Again, just trying to make sure we're being thoughtful with what the requirements are so that there's no potential for someone to come in without having the full forethought of what's needed in order to develop something like this. And number 27, typical cross-sections shall be provided to demonstrate the general relationship between proposed industrial development and existing residential structures. It was discussed at the last hearing, obviously the site itself has its challenges from the topographic standpoint, so we want to make sure that any future application includes cross-sections to clearly depict what that relation is to the surrounding properties, what would be proposed from an earthwork standpoint, excavation standpoint, so that it can clearly demonstrate that, we will not have an adverse impact on the surrounding properties and communities. Next slide, please. So at the last hearing, it was also discussed regarding concerns with traffic as it extends south towards Interstate 84. As we mentioned, we would anticipate these to be warehouse uses. And there was a number of comments raised by folks in Middlebury who I believe attended the hearing and talked about, well, what about those intersections as you approach 84? The good news is, and it's something that I want this commission to be aware of if you aren't already aware of, and also the public, the Department of Transportation does have design plans to provide significant improvements to those intersections and those ramps as you approach Interstate 84. What we have on the screen is the preliminary design for the I-84 Interchange 17 project, DOT project number 80-128. So they are providing and will be proposing extensive both geometric and capacity improvements to those intersections, and that affects both, both eastbound and westbound ramps and access onto 84. I just wanted to, obviously, as you drive through those intersections today, there are some constraints, there's some raised islands, some geometric concerns, so we certainly understand that, where those concerns come from. But the good news is the DOT does acknowledge those, has addressed those concerns, and has design plans prepared, and they're moving forward with significant wholesale improvements to those areas. So, any future development of our property and the associated traffic, we'll be able to safely navigate through these intersections and access Interstate 84 as will likely be intended and needed to support the proposed development. So we did want to just provide some of that information for both the commission and the public, as it may not be common knowledge that the state is proposing some significant improvements in those areas. Next slide, please. So we just wanted to provide some photos. I know there was some discussion and there was a request from staff to kind of see if we could provide some drone footage. So we do have a number of videos here that were prepared, and I think some of the commission members who were able to attend the site walk, did get a better handle on, the size of the property and where we're proposing activity and what that separation is from those residents. So I think we're just going to open up these quick and play them for everyone.
For the record, Luke Morrow with Solar Engineering. I'm a professional engineer in the state of Connecticut. Just to give everybody an idea of what we're looking at here. We started out looking north along Middlebury Road, returning clockwise.
Luke, hold the slide for a second. You have to speak into a speaker, Luke. Okay. Mike.
Okay. For the record, Luke Morrow from Solar Engineering. I just wanted to give a quick overview. So this second video started, we were looking north along Middlebury Road, and then the flyover proceeded to go clockwise towards Bunker Hill Road, and then I think everybody may have saw the open Panelatus Pond towards the end of that video there, and I'll try to provide a better narration for this third video, and we can certainly repeat.
You could run the video again, I'm sorry, I just wanted to make the point.
So start this one again?
You want to cut the lights on top here?
So this is a view along Middlebury Road to the left-hand side, and as we pan here, kind of clockwise, you can see up in the distance in that hill the nursery that's located along Bunker Hill Road. These areas, kind of a bare trees, is a water course that's going to be separating the residential from the industrial side of the development. And here, this open area you see here, kind of on the right side, that's Panelatus Pond. And then in the background, that area of the bare trees, that's also a wetland pocket adjacent to Newwood Road. That generally would be not touched as part of this proposed development plan. And we pan back towards, looking back towards Middlebury Road as this video comes to a close. This is a video along Bunker Hill Road. That's Davis Street Extension. As we pan counterclockwise here, you'll get a view of the proposed area of where the residential development would be located. You can see the stream there along the left-hand side. That would be the demising line, if you will, between the right side would be residential, and then towards the left would be the industrial subdivision that was described in our plans. And then I'll just quickly go back to slide number one.
I think that third video kind of showed a good perspective when you look at the Bunker Hill, that water course immediately behind that open area, and then the larger hill towards the south. You know, as this commission may recall, the previous development approved for this property included access off of Bunker Hill. It provided and proposed crossings over that water course and floodplain, and really impacted a much larger footprint of the property than what we're proposing. You know, when we first looked at this, as we discussed at the last meeting, we really wanted to look at the appropriateness of uses and the access to those uses. And as we looked at Bunker Hill and the area that was just highlighted in that drone footage, you know, from a residential standpoint, Bunker Hill is really the only road that really, you know, we believe could or should support that type of development. So what we're proposing, again, is the access for residential off of Bunker Hill. It is tight to that, tight to the road, you know, and it doesn't propose any impacts or crossings over that water course and you know, associated wetland resource. It doesn't propose any impacts to the floodplain, which was previously proposed and approved. So it really kind of bifurcates that. And again, from an industrial standpoint, you know, we're simply proposing to extend Newwood Road into the property to really keep that activity, that commercial activity, that industrial activity through the corridors which currently support it. And are currently improved with those types of uses. So we do believe that this does, you know, kind of, you know, really look at the property itself, its surroundings, its environment, and proposes I think, what I believe to be the least impactful from an overall impact standpoint, from a square footage standpoint, from a traffic standpoint, and really from a natural resource standpoint. You know, in terms of, you know, that extension of Newwood Road to create that, and then to create that potential industrial subdivision. Again, I think this image that's up on the screen also, again, proposes and highlights that we are, you know, we're attempting to be as respectful and protective of those residences along Middlebury Road as we do, and we have added the language to make sure that there is that 500-foot landscape buffer from any of those structures along that road to again, further enforce and reinforce that we want to make sure that whatever we propose isn't impactful to those residents, and again, is really merely an extension of that commercial and really industrial activity that already exists off of Straits Turnpike. So with that, I think that, you know, we certainly listened at the last hearing. We heard a lot of concerns regarding what we were proposing. We've tried to come back with a number of substantive changes to our proposed language to ensure we have some more protections. There was one other comment that was raised regarding, you know, potential access to Bunker Hill and site distance limitations. We have reviewed that. We have gone out and reviewed the you know, existing geometry of Bunker Hill Road, and we are confident that we would be able to create, you know, a formal entrance there that would meet all of the appropriate site distance requirements and not create an unsafe condition. And again, those level of details would be things that would come before this commission during this next phase, which would be a site plan process. And again, any of that access also would have additional review by both the DOT and, local public works, and of course, this commission and any other, third-party reviewing agencies that this commission may want to have look at these applications as they come before them. So with that, we'd be happy to answer any other questions that the commission may have based on this information, and certainly hear more from the public.
We've been an hour and a half here since the beginning. Oops, thank you. We've been an hour and a half, so I'd like to propose a 5-minute approximate break right now, and then we'll come back and continue the public hearing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. You all done with it? Yeah, I think so.
Recording stopped.
That's okay. If I lose it, I can duplicate it. That's fine.
You normally don't.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Yep, thank you, no problem.
right, staff? Mark? Mark, you have any comments to make regarding this proposal at this point?
Recording in progress.
Congratulations, you're on.
Yeah, right. Obviously, well, to me, that they've listened to the comments that were made at the public hearing last meeting and on the site walk held last week, and have provided us with a significant amount of information that goes a long way towards answering a lot of the concerns that have been expressed. I would encourage the commission during the public hearing process to ask for elaborations on any outstanding questions that commissioners may have on either portion of the project. We're keeping kind of running notes eventually to make a final report to the commission, again, based on the concerns that we've had, the concerns that obviously we'll hear from the public tonight, and consolidate them into a report for the commission. But I think that's all the comments I have for right now.
Okay, thank you, Mark. All right. Time for the public to have, the commission doesn't have any questions at this moment. We're going to listen to the public, and then we'll address the applicant. Thank you.
Understood.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Brian and Kevin, thank you. Okay, anybody who wishes to speak, please give us your name and your address, approach the podium, and, yes, sir, go ahead.
My name's Pete.
No, so please do it at the speaker, sir, at the mic.
My name is Pete Tracus. I live on 1109 Middlebury Road. I've been there over 50 years. Okay, I think this project is a big mistake. My neighbors I talked to, nobody wants it. Okay, we're concerned about the traffic on Straits Turnpike. 4 or 5 o'clock, can you picture another 20 tractor trailers going down there? You'd be sitting there in traffic all day. And the pollution from all the diesel trucks, and a concern. Last time this housing project was 55 years and over. Now they're saying 2 bedrooms and they can have kids. What if they put 5 kids in 1 bedroom? You know, there's a lot of things that they're changing the character of the town. And I hate to see this happen in my lifetime. And that's all I got to say. I think it's a big mistake.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am, or miss?
All right, good evening. My name is Melissa Allen, 1201 Middlebury Road.
Melissa, move the mic a little closer to you. That's it, thank you.
Okay. I didn't have access to their adjustments before I wrote this, so I'll skip through some things. I'll start with where I started last time. The residents of Watertown and surrounding areas oppose this proposal for many reasons. The first being simply that this plan is not consistent with the plan of conservation and development. The current plan of conservation and development states that Straits Turnpike North, located on Route 63 in Bunker Hill, serves as a transitional area between Straits Turnpike commercial area and residential neighborhoods to the north. Current uses are single-family homes, residential care facilities, and office space. Public surveys conducted during the process indicate the community is split over whether to permit or prohibit commercial development. Not industrial, commercial. The future land use plan recommends that future development proposals in this area should be designed in a manner that is consistent with the transitional nature of this area and should be considered on a case-by-case basis. Special consideration should be given to potential visual and traffic impacts to surrounding residential areas, and community outreach should be conducted for future development proposals. That's what the current plan says. Approval of this application is prohibited because it is contrary to the plan of conservation and development. It does not seek a case-by-case development pattern. Rather, it seeks a blanket wholesale zone change to industrial adjacent to an existing residential zone. Moreover, if consideration is given to the visual and traffic impacts as required by the plan of conservation and development, then this application cannot be granted, as it would cause unprecedented increases in traffic, which would forever change the character of the area. Zoning transitions. Again, we talked about this property is an R70 zoned area. Yes, it does abut some industrial, but it also abuts R70 and R30 residential properties. The town has an obligation to the residents and homeowners who purchase properties in the surrounding area to prohibit such excessive zoning change. If approved, it will immediately and negatively impact property values and immediately allow for numerous uses that extend beyond the developer's current plan. Additionally, Sully states, quote, "The multifamily residential portion of the project will be accessed from Bunker Hill Road. Considering the residential nature of Bunker Hill Road corridor, the proposed multifamily will be in harmony with surrounding uses. Yet, corridor-styled apartments with no garages and less than 2 parking spaces per unit are not consistent with, nor in harmony with the single-family homes that currently exist in the surrounding neighborhoods. With the style of apartments proposed comes the potential for lack of pride of homeownership and lack of upkeep and maintenance, as the developer's primary objective is maximizing profits. It's also reasonable to conclude there will be impacts to town services, which I know they talked about schools, but we also didn't talk about police and the fire department and what that would require for such a massive development and the needs that would be required there. Again, last time we talked about what we're actually here for is a zone change, a zone overlay. The key characteristics of a overlay zoning is that it layers another set of regulations on top of the existing zoning regulations, but does not replace them. The proposal does present mixed use with an overwhelming focus on industrial. Additionally, in the proposed plan, there's a statement in there that says, mixed-use site development shall be permitted, but is not required. This means the developers are not obligated to create mixed-use developments. Instead, they would have the flexibility to choose the type of development that best suits their needs and objectives, whether it's mixed-use or a single-use industrial development, which seems to be where the focus is. We talked a lot about traffic last time, and I know that they said there'll be more studies to be done. And I know next on the list, there's a new commercial building that's going up right at the corner lot there that needs to be taken into consideration. There's also the residential housing complex that's proposed to go up on Route 63 in Middlebury, right next to Watertown. So there's quite an influx of traffic that's going to happen over the next couple of years that was not considered in this study. Conservation. I think that video really spoke a lot. I mean, that is a beautiful piece of property. It is filled with trees. It is filled with wetlands. The farm down the street uses it. I don't like the sound of coyotes, but I'm going to miss the sound of coyotes back there, and I think the neighborhood will too, instead of of tractor trailers. It's really just devastating what could happen there. Their proposal states, I quote, "The project will be constructed with consideration for existing vegetation and will aim to minimize tree removal." I don't see how that's possible with all the parking spots and the amount of concrete and roadways that are going to have to go in there for buildings, even if they are not distribution facilities, the amount of parking that's going to need to go in there for 1,525 employees. That's 1,500 cars coming in there in addition to tractor trailers and warehouse trucks or whatever it would be used for. Lastly, the last time we were here, engineer came in and said that they were here to hear the feedback and see what they can do to make their proposal more amenable to the community and the commission. From what I just heard, it was just a lot of numbers. I don't know that it really addressed any of our concerns about the traffic or just taking away a piece of property and devaluing our homes and taking over a piece of property to put industrial buildings. So thank you for your time. I hope that we really just get back to what we're here for, which is a zoning change. There's a lot of information here, but that's not where we're at. We are talking about taking a piece of residential property and converting it to industrial. And when will that stop? Thank you.
Thank you.
Michael Jedd, 79 Oak Drive. I'm aware that this commission is not obliged to answer any questions, but I have two simple yes or no questions to preface my statements. Does this entire project hinge on the rezoning of the property associated? Is this the limit to land in the area, or can it be rezoned again? The reason I ask this is to bring to light how this rezoning can snowball into the entire Bunker Hill area. Where does the rezoning end? If this land is rezoned, it's setting a precedent that can be used against this commission in the future. Who's to say that neighboring properties cannot apply for rezoning with the basis of past practice set by the example before us today? The boundaries of zoning's limits have already been broken in the Bunker Hill area. Examples such as the medical building currently being constructed on Bunker Hill and Straits Turnpike that was once zoned residential, and the Planter's Choice Wholesale Sales Building, which was passed as a commercial building in an R70 zone. The rules seem to be flying out the window. If the boundaries keep being broken in this manner, who's to say landowners such as the Newman Holdings, which is the majority landowner in the Bunker Hill area, Nelson Lynn, the Logue family, the Calabrese family, and the Kalinowskis family can't petition for rezoning of their properties? It's a win-win for them. If they were also rezoned, all these referenced landowners could benefit from increased property values, the ability to change their business plans, sublet property, build with limited restrictions, and while continuing their agricultural business and retaining their Public Act 490 farm and forest land tax benefits. Once the zoning is changed, there is not much the town can do to limit the development in these areas other than wetland regulations. This is something that this town needs to, so desperately. I strongly urge this commission to think about the future ramifications of the decision and the potential to shape not only this piece of property, but also the entire southwest corner of this town. I also this evening saw a beautiful presentation that I could probably sum up in one sentence. What this company wants to do is transform a beautiful, pristine area into a 21st century version of a General Motors plant with row housing included. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Nancy Brooks, 427 Davis Street in Oakville. And everybody brought up very, very good, valid points. But my question is, since the apartments are going to be open to anybody instead of age restricted, then what are we going to do if we start getting all the welfare people in there? That's what concerns me. And also, it doesn't say the square footage of any of the apartments, the one-bedroom, the two-bedroom. And is this going to be owned by Heritage Development, or is it going to be sold to somebody? We've seen that happen with the Cobb Street apartments. They were taken over by HUD, and they're having major problems here now. So those are my concerns, and I'm hoping that we could get some answers on that. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Elaine Orsini from 188 Old Colony Drive. It's Orsini. I was like, really? Okay, so I just took a few notes, not as prepared as the other people that came before me. But in the presentation that they gave us, some of the data that they've given appears to be aged. So the ACS data, and I could be wrong, appeared to come from 2018. So the rental data from 2018, the information in regards to the children coming into our school systems. In sitting with a member of the Board of Education last week at a function at Grand Oak, we were talking about this particular project and the effect it would have on our school system. And I'm not sure if everybody understands, but we do have special needs children in our school system, and one special needs child who deserves the education requires a funding of $250,000 for one child. If we have 4 of them, just 4 of the .035 that were mentioned, that would absolutely null and void the profit that was presented to us. So something to keep in mind. Not to mention our services for our fire and our departments. It states that there might be 1,525 total new jobs created from this development. Who's to say even 1% of those would be living in Watertown and paying their taxes to the town of Watertown? The demographic, who's walking to work? Is it the 16 to the 21-year-olds? Because they're the ones who don't really pay into the system, and they're probably going to either move because it is quite expensive, and because I don't walk to work, and I live in Watertown, and I work about 45 minutes away, so I'm thinking it's the younger generation that might be walking and biking to work. Lastly, I just ask the commission that you have a moral obligation to listen to the residents of this town. I've been here for 24 years. I came from the city of Waterbury to come to a town that was great to raise my children in, and all we're asking is for you to take into consideration what this will do to the town of Watertown. And I think it will be a horrible thing to see, as I was raised in Waterbury and moved out of Waterbury and saw what development has been done, and I don't want to see that for this town. So thank you for your time, and have a great night.
Hello, my name is Philip George. I'm 1176 Middlebury Road. I just want to make a statement. A lot's being said about the detrimental impacts of this zone change might bring post-construction, which is all true. But however, I want to talk about the impacts that will be created during construction, which I know because my past profession was to build these. I was a superintendent that used to build these kind of industrial parks. So here's a brief summary of what we're about to expect if this gets passed. Once this gets passed, and we had a beautiful, they did a beautiful presentation of that zone, or the drone that showed that beautiful woods, all that's going to be impacted. Approximately 196 acres. Hundreds of trees are going to be cut down and removed. Land's going to be cleared. It's going to be required it's going to be required heavy logging equipment, chainsaws, wood chippers. They'll be going up to 8 hours a day for weeks on end. These logging trucks will be loading up the roads, local roads, Straits Turnpike, and the local roads. They're going to be filled, making hundreds of trips back and forth. Wildlife is going to be displaced. Deers, fox, bobcats, bears, raccoons, turkeys, birds, squirrels, rodents of all kinds. I know because I've seen them there and heard them. Where are these wildlife going to go? It's going to go into the neighborhoods. It's going to go into the residents' backyards. You know, the wildlife is, the woods is going to be destroyed, and the animals are going to be lost forever. After the logging's done, what do we expect? The heavy equipment's going to start showing up. The bulldozers, the large earth-moving equipment. These all going to be shipped in on big tractor trailers. Normally, they're going to be brought in by police escort. It's going to jam up the roads. Then they're going to start putting in the construction entrance. The dump trucks with the stone, large stone coming in, 20, 30 at a time, just dumping stone. I'm sure if anybody has been around a construction site, you'll be hearing the banging of the dump truck doors all throughout the day. Then the construction starts. There's going to be loads of materials being shipped in, steel, concrete trucks, dump trucks constantly. And as the developer was saying, this is going to be taking years. This is what we're going to have to deal with for years before this development even gets going. So we have to endure all this before this even gets going. And as the developer says, he's not even a resident of Watertown, so he will not even have to bear any of this. So that's basically what I wanted to say. This process is going to take years just to even get going. So there's humongous impacts that's going to happen to the residents of this town just before this facility even gets going and up and moving. That's basically what I would like to say.
Mr. Mango.
Good evening, David Mango, 240 Riverside Street, Oakville, Connecticut. Years ago, my boss, Henry Paparazzo, was going to build the Penelitis property. I'm not mentioning no names. Somebody even planning and zoning wanted a 40-foot road. Henry was going to give him a 38. When Paparazzo does a job, it looked like Heritage Village, gorgeous. He doesn't do like all these other developers. I'm not pertaining to you, but cheapen the product. It would look like a little factory here, be nestled in the woods. You wouldn't even notice it was an industrial park. It would look just like that picture you saw on the film. That's what how he would build it. Now you got these apartments. You know, Middlebury Road is sort of rural. Then you're going to exit that. What are you going to do? Reconstruction of Middlebury Road? Bunker Hill, coming down through, when you get by the cider mill and go over the bend to the bottom where your condos would come out there, you probably need a traffic light there, or you would have to do the reconstruction of that road and make it more plain. You probably need a traffic light down there because the people come flying over that hill. Now you take the factories, you guys want to clear cut it. So many, one building is 275,000 square feet. If that's on one floor, that's about 7.5 acre building. That's massive. So you ain't going to see all these trees and then all these parking lots. You're going to butcher Watertown. And then the amount of trucks going out New Woods Road going down Straits Turnpike, it'd be like a train. You got hundreds of loading docks here. There's so many trucks that are coming in, emptying, going out from this truck onto this truck, and this truck takes it from, this one brings it from, say, Maryland to Connecticut, and this one takes it from Watertown and sends it to Maine. That's the buku trucks. We don't need that traffic. And then the amount of runoff from all these parking lots, all these roofs, you're going to send that, all that water, you're going to have big retention basins with hourglasses that leave hourglass to get out of a retention pond is, it starts off wide, it goes so many feet narrow to slow the water down, and then it goes wide again. You're going to set all this sand and silt, whatever you got, oil separator chambers you got to put in the parking lot, maybe underground retention basins if you do it this big, and you're going to send all that water down that little brook to the pin shop pond. You're going to wipe out that place. There's a lot of water going down there. That, if I was you guys, I would do like I told you, way Henry Paparazzo would do it. Small shops nestled in the woods with a winding road and all the foliage, and it would look gorgeous. And you could still do your condos. But a project like this with these big buildings, you guys should go over and look at Fusco's junkyard. Take that whole mountain. They were going to build a big mall there years ago. I don't know what the controversy was. He wouldn't know more about it. They were going to do a big shelf cut. You could buy that property, buy Cures, and buy Markowitz's, the old Frostbridge junkyard down below, do a big cut, contaminated fill areas. If it's more than 500 parts per million, you could fill over the top of it. Some of them areas there, by the time you get to Cures, you have a 30-foot fill. Make that one big plateau. You've got two exits coming off of Frostbridge Road, north and south. You've got two exits coming off of Echo Lake Road, north and south. A mile down the road is 84, a piece of cake. The town could make a lot of money, and you wouldn't have all this controversy like we have over here now. It's out of the way. It's an ideal situation. And if you need more fill, I know a place a mile away, you could get all the rock you want. But that's where I would build this, over there. Think about it. Yeah. That's all. Over here, you're going to destroy this beautiful piece of property now. You got to go smaller. You got to make it look like it's nestled in the woods. A little shop here, a little shop here, the condos over here. It'd be fine and dandy. Have a good one.
Good evening. My name's Bernie Karashki, 869 Bunker Hill Road. This hearing, it seems like there's two components. First, it's for the zoning change, and the second is the actual building of this development. And I just wanted to address, well, first, let me say that I totally support all the speakers that we had here with their comments. I wanted to just address one thing that I don't understand, and it's something I think the commissioners should be asking, and that is, how is this developer, how are these developers going to get access to New Wood Road? New Wood Road, there's the 50-foot easement is owned by you and me and every other taxpayer. That's owned by the town of Watertown. There's another piece of property that's owned by the Southbury Equipment Company. Now, with full disclosure, I think it would be nice if the developers would tell us how are they going to obtain the real access to New Wood Road. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Lucinda Lopes Phelan, 420 Thomaston Road. Lopes Helan. Address is 420 Thomaston Road in Watertown. I currently sit on the Board of Education and just wanted to come and just express some additional thoughts on the impact into the school system that could happen with this development. The estimate that was given tonight was $15,500 per child that this would be an impact on. The reality is that right now in district it's $19,500 per child, and that is not including a child that has special needs. The estimation for children that have special needs is $65,000 to $255,000 for a child that has special needs that needs to be outsourced. The current numbers that we are seeing is that 17% of the children in our district require some type of special needs services. So we should keep that in mind when we're estimating how many children are going to be coming into the school system. Additionally, one other thing to keep in mind is as these children are coming into the school system, we are going to have to also include additional classrooms, additional teachers that have to be estimated. So a new special needs program would estimate over $350,000. So bear in mind that though developments are great, we have to see the impact on the community and especially on the children and also on the schools. Do our schools have enough classrooms and teachers to be able to accommodate this? Thank you.
My name is Valerie Vicenzi, and I live at 237 Concord Drive. Vicenzi. I would ask of you to think about if this was coming near your neighborhood, how you would feel. I moved to the suburbs, so I didn't have to deal with a lot of that kind of stuff. I know the money dangled in front of you is tempting, but I beg of you to please think of the people in the neighborhood and how this will affect everyone. Thank you.
The lady in the green sweater wanted to speak. Would you still want to speak? Okay.
Thank you. My name is Rosemary Longo, Longo, 1176 Middlebury Road. I agree with everything that the residents are saying here. I oppose and ask that you don't approve a zone change. One of the things that I'm really concerned about is crime. 250 approximate ungaraged vehicles, I think is going to create a mecca for car thieves all throughout the day and night. And I think it will just spill into the neighboring neighborhoods very, very, very quickly. I think it's a problem for us in Watertown today, and I think it's just going to get increase with all of these cars just sitting there. And do we have the police? Do we have enough police force to really manage this increase in crime? And then do we have the right fire protection and equipment to manage the additional 760,000 plus square feet with 60-foot buildings? I mean, I don't know, ladders, equipments, like we have to, be prepared for environmental disasters if there's cold storage facilities, or I'm not sure if they're thinking about warehousing. It sounded like a gentleman was talking about factories. So just, are we equipped? I don't know the answer, but if not, it's something that we need to consider. And then the infrastructure costs on our roads with all the increased tractor trailer and the logging equipment and maybe blasting or whatever it's going to take. I think all of that, if we start doing the math and start adding it up, I know that the projections were about $1 million in taxes. Doesn't sound like a lot. It just sounds like all of the extra requirements would really start exceeding $1 million a year in tax revenue. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Leo DiNicola, DINICOLA, 1002 Middlebury Road. I'm right at the intersection of Bunker Hill Extension, and sorry I missed the first meeting, but the idea of home ownership is kind of where I'd like to kind of focus, because I think it's been said the rental kind of creates its own problems. Their own slide said something about homeowner housing had half the number of children going to schools as renters. It's in their own presentation. So I was going to bring up the costs of other issues that's already been brought up, the roads, things of that sort, all the other services that are going to be required. So I think for those factors, I'm also against this project. Really have nothing else to add, but thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Steve Hartnett, 755 Lake Winnemog Road. I'm probably against this project. It's my first meeting. But just off the bat, just a lack of transparency from the builders. It's very vague. There's a manufacturing facility, there's low-income housing, there's warehouses. That doesn't cover all the buildings. And that really doesn't manufacturing what? And another point was, it's strange in the fire department. We recently just actually built a new building, and we had a fire within the first month. What's going to be in that manufacturing facility? Is there going to be ammonia gas? Is there going to be, petroleum? What are we doing there? Who are you going to put in these facilities? What kind of factories are going to be? That would be a pretty good answer to come to one of these meetings with. Another thing is just the litter. The litter is going to be unbearable. There's going to be litter everywhere. It's going to be blowing around in the air. Litter, dust, speeders, traffic, whatever, man. We're gonna get a whole grab bag of goodies. That's I'm being sarcastic when I say that. This is gonna be terrible. It's gonna be terrible for the town. And $1.5 million in tax revenue the first year, big deal. Big deal. Who cares? What's it gonna cost you guys to build this thing per square foot? I'd like to see those numbers. That's all I have to say for now. I'll see you next month.
Matthew Tomczewski, 1275 Middlebury Road. So by seeing the buffer and the picture of that and everything, it kind of cleared a little bit up. My house is the house that you can see from right above this, directly behind that largest factory, industrial, whatever you want to call it, because they won't tell us what it is. That's the largest building with the most loading docks, with the most parking spaces. This 500-foot buffer is to my house, not to my property. My house sits on the front of my property, so I can't enjoy the back half of my property anymore if this goes through. Every morning there's going to be smog, diesel coming right up out of that thing every morning when all them trucks come to load up. Another issue I have is I bought my house with the understanding that the property behind it was zoned for housing only. I don't understand how a developer has a whole entire plan already said, oh, this is what we're going to bring in, this is what... The land ain't even zoned for that. That's a problem. I know they're asking for a zone change, but I ask you guys to consider why it was set as a residential zone in the first place. I understand there's money involved and money could come into the town, that's great, but that land was zoned as residential for a reason. To separate Straits Turnpike from these residential, old agricultural, rural neighborhoods. And to just blanketly change two large lots. These are large lots. To change them both just to industrial with a just a broad stroke. Oh, these are industrial properties. And now we're just going to put up God knows what down there and rip down all those trees. I mean, somebody said something about the animals. I mean, I have a decent property there. Over this past month, since I've been here last, I've seen the bears come through, the coyotes come through my yard, the bobcat comes up, leaves his scat on my driveway. I mean, where are these all gonna go? Where are they gonna go? They're gonna go right into my house, right into my backyard, right into my neighbor's house. When my neighbor's kid goes outside to play on her trampoline, a bobcat might be underneath it. I mean, like these are things that nobody's really like bringing up. And like I said last time, this is not conservation. You can't rip down hundreds of acres worth of trees and call it conservation, no matter what way you do it. It's not conservation. This is a small town. We don't need to be Waterbury. We don't need to be Trumbull. All right, Trumbull is literally turning into Bridgeport. So if you want to use Trumbull as an example, that's a pretty poor example. Trumbull is turning into Bridgeport because of things like this. And we don't need to become a subsection of Waterbury. We have our own little nice niche here where people want to live here for a certain reason. And then just to put up apartment buildings and, you know, huge facilities in my backyard, like, it just don't seem right. It's not the area for it. There's tons of areas across the state that are set up for that. There's tons of zones that are already industrial. I mean, me personally, if I were to buy a property, I would have a design in mind for what it's zoned for. I mean, you go out and buy all this property, you own all this property, and you just want to change all the zoning and everything. Where's the plan? Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. And if we make just a broad change like that, it's going to change the entire neighborhood. That entire section of Watertown is now going to become an industrial section. And the houses are going to get swallowed by it. And as the other gentleman said before, you'll watch the other farms and the other large properties start subdividing and asking for the same changes that you're looking to possibly give this gentleman. And it's just not right. It's set up for residential for a reason, and maybe build some houses. You know, saying there's a big issue with housing, you got 3 huge residential properties that you can build housing on. Instead, you want to build industrial properties, because that's where the money is.
Okay, Matthew, you good?
I'm done.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Richard Rozansky, 35 Reynolds Street, Watertown. Rozansky. Richard. 35 Reynolds Street in Watertown. You're welcome. Just some comments. The presentation was talking about manufacturing jobs, manufacturing employment, talking about over 1,000 employees, the multiplier effect. But when I look at the packet that was distributed to everybody, there's no mention of manufacturing. It's all large warehousing distribution centers. So I don't know who this manufacturing company is that's going to move into this first building. We live in Connecticut. We don't have a lot of companies breaking down our doors to build new manufacturing plants. We already have an excess of manufacturing available space here in Watertown. If you go to Buckingham, the old Risden plant, Main Street, Filson Anodizing, anywhere along Park Road, we have numerous empty former manufacturing places that have tens of thousands of square feet of floor space, open lots on Park Road that still haven't been developed yet. So I think any mention of manufacturing in this project doesn't seem to fly with me. It really seems it's more warehousing distribution. That's the intent of this project. That's pretty much a no-starter for most people here in Watertown, and doesn't seem to be even possible to me unless you want to talk about 4-laning Straits Turnpike, and there's no talk about that, and I don't think the developer's ever going to want to pay to do that themselves. So that's all my comments. Thanks.
Thank you.
Catherine Camera, 31 Cottage Place. This meeting comes to mind, and I want to tell you all congratulations for being here, because I had my Sealy property fight here not all that long ago, and I can tell you that we probably took up a quarter of the space that you are, but we prevailed because we were people who were not going to back down. Unfortunately, we did spend an awful lot of money on an appeal, and I sincerely hope that you don't have to do that here, because no one should have to do that. So I'm appealing to you as the council to listen to the people, because we didn't get listened to the first round and it didn't go very well. So the people matter. And, you know, other decisions that are made here, I can say that not all that long ago, the zone was changed for the Hiley property, and another car dealership was built there. And we talk about the need for tax money here. Well, I would ask all of you to look into how much money a car dealership brings into the town, and it is basically nothing. Okay, we get the property tax, which we get on that anyway, no matter what's on a building. So we have allowed so many car dealerships to take up so much of our property that could have been used for other things. And another fight that we won was the corner of Bunker Hill and Straits Turnpike, when they wanted to turn that into yet another car dealership. Well, I was part of that as well, where we fought and fought and fought, took it to court, spent a lot of money on that too. Although it was allowed to be a car dealership, I think the message was pretty clear that the people didn't want.
I think you might push the wrong button, Catherine. There you go.
I'm on. Thank you. Give me back my time. So, lost my train of thought. Let's see. So that was another situation that we basically prevailed on, because eventually it's now going to be a medical building, which will bring us in a lot more tax dollars than a car dealership would. So the decisions that are made here really have an impact on us, the people, and our taxes. And I can honestly say that, you know, it's burnout to keep fighting this stuff. But I will say that I've had 2 wins on both of those, because we fought, and we fought hard. So I'm sorry to say to you guys, I'm encouraging you guys to keep fighting, because if you don't, the change is going to come, and you're not going to be happy, and you're going to have to live with it. So I hope it doesn't cost you money like it has me over the years, but you've got to stay in the fight. So please listen to these people. It matters to all of us. Thank you.
Anybody else from the public? Okay. I'll ask one more time. Anybody else from the public? Okay. All right, let's move on then. Commissioners. The applicant, yeah, okay. Well, yes. Kevin, go ahead. You want to, I'm sure you want to respond to all of this. Right.
Sure. Happy to, provide a response now,
Okay,
or
please do.
see if there's, sure.
Respond now, and then the commission will have an opportunity to make its comments, and we'd had a chance to hear everybody at that point.
Of course.
Staff, the public, the applicant.
Of course.
Very good. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you. So again, for the record, my name's Kevin Soley, licensed professional engineer in the state of Connecticut, with Soley Engineering. So I just wanted to provide some history and some clarification items, and again, I said this at the last hearing, and I honestly believe this with every project that I'm involved in. I think going into these projects, we start with an initial goal from our clients. And there was talks tonight about transparency and questions, so I wanted to provide some clarity to a number of those things. The subject property that we're talking about is 198 acres. The site actually used to be, it was formerly zoned industrial. That zone was changed to accommodate the Heritage Village plan, which was a 55 and older community. I'll say that plan provided access off of Bunker Hill Road. It had a number of wetland crossings. It had actually more disturbance proposed on this property than what is currently being proposed with this application. It had more tree clearing. It had development closer to the surrounding property lines. And it had much more impact on the existing environment from a construction standpoint and, ultimate built environment. So the zone was changed to accommodate that development. That development didn't move forward. Market conditions, the site constraints, the construction costs made that project not economically viable. It was never constructed. And the property owners are desirable of selling their property. They want to, they put it out on the market. They want to see if someone is interested in looking at it. And our clients came to us with an interest of looking at the property to see what could be done and what would the highest and best use be. When we first were tasked with this exercise, we wanted to really look at, again, the site constraints, the current market conditions, access, previous approvals, things like that. And what we came up with is what's before you. The biggest component that we saw is that currently residential zone abuts industrial zones. And the site is currently zoned R70, which means that if a developer could make the financials work, they could develop single-family homes, quite a few of them on 198 acres. It would likely have far more impact on the school system. There's no way for the commission to restrict if someone wanted to propose a single-family development there, or say that you couldn't put student kids in the home, school-age children in those developments. So there's a potential for that. What we've come up with is we've tried to design something that takes a lot of these different factors into consideration to propose something that we think could be least impactful. Now, again, a lot of people, and I'm an engineer, we do this for a living. I speak in front of commissions all the time. I hear people's concerns, and there's always concerns when, change happens or when construction happens. One of the things that we looked at with this is we wanted to really bifurcate the residential versus the industrial. When you look at what we're proposing, there were comments about New Wood Road and the extension of New Wood Road. I can attest that this property has deeded perpetual rights over that parcel to access New Wood Road. That is on the land records, and it was established when that other parcel was subdivided and split off from this property. We couldn't possibly be before you if those rights weren't clearly defined and established from a legal standpoint. So I know one of the public made a comment about that. I wanted to clarify that. There were comments about, overall impacts, what we're proposing, how we're destroying so much of the environment. The subject site, as I mentioned, is 198 acres. We are proposing approximately 24.6% coverage on this property. That means, based on our current plan, we would be preserving 148 acres of open space and pervious coverage, landscaping, as part of the development of this property. Now, there were comments and questions about, there's a lack of transparency. So our clients, who we're representing, are looking to purchase this property and develop it for what they believe to be the highest and best use. So when there's talks about who's coming into this development, we don't know who is coming into this development. As was mentioned, this application is for the establishment of a planned development district, which would allow for these uses to come before this commission for a site plan approval. All that's proposed this evening is, again, to create the zone, to allow for this to come forward in a future application, and essentially to establish a master plan. That master plan is what's, as we've depicted, it essentially includes multifamily along Bunker Hill Road and industrial to be accessed off of Straits Turnpike and New Wood Road. Again, an industrial and commercial area within the town of Watertown. So access to the industrial portion would be through an industrial commercial area, and it would be access to a state road, Straits Turnpike, which would provide access to the state interstate, I-84. So the concerns regarding, potential impacts and strains on municipal services and things like that, we certainly understand. But again, what we're proposing is essentially just a master plan to allow for these developments to take place. And what I've mentioned was each individual application, each individual building, those all have to come back before the commission. And then at that time, there has to be discussion about what the use is. And those uses, again, what we've identified is likely the highest and best use for these types of properties are warehousing type facilities. Those are the tenants that are coming to the market. They're coming to the state of Connecticut. If you look at a regional placement of warehouse facilities, they are consolidated in a few locations, Pennsylvania, and there's been a desire to locate these facilities throughout the 84 corridor to connect New York to Boston and beyond, really to actually reduce the impacts to, from a vehicle miles traveled and things like that. Everyone wants to have immediate access to things. They want to be able to order something and have it delivered to their house that afternoon or the very next day. In order to accomplish that, they need to establish the infrastructure networks to support that. The tenants that are in the market, and even a lot of the businesses that exist in Watertown, they are desperate for space. There are a number of tenants who have outgrown their current facilities. They have outgrown their current buildings. They want to stay in town. They want to continue to invest in the community, but there's a void of availability from a space standpoint. So while our plans depict, a number of different industrial buildings to be created over 4 industrial lots, as those applications move forward, as site plans come forward for those individual buildings, the actual uses have to be established, identified. Again, we believe, based on market conditions, that these are likely warehouse-type uses. But if a tenant were to come before us that was interested in one of these facilities or a portion thereof, that information would have to be detailed as part of a next phase, a next step, that site plan process. So again, we understand the fear that comes along with what we're proposing, and we aren't trying to be vague or ambiguous or anything like that. We're simply trying to create the mechanism for a project like this to come forward. This is that first step. This is a master plan, and individual applications have to come next. There were concerns about how this could potentially grow and take precedent. The beauty of something like this is a completely legislative action that this commission has to consider on its own merit. If other property owners in the area, let's say a large piece of property on Bunker Hill, said, you know what, I want to try to do the same thing, they could come before you and you could say, we don't want industrial on Bunker Hill Road. We don't want access or traffic on Bunker Hill Road. We've recognized that, and we've tried to design a plan that takes that into consideration. We aren't proposing to put any industrial traffic or any truck traffic on Bunker Hill Road. We have tried to establish something and create a plan that'll make sure that that traffic stays on Straits Turnpike, on New Wood Road, and through those industrial areas.
Excuse me, hold on. Please, somebody's speaking. Please do not talk. Be respectful. Thank you. Go ahead, sir, Kevin.
Thank you. So we've tried to be cognizant of that, right? But again, this is, we're trying to also be mindful of the market. There were a lot of discussions about the plan of conservation and development. The plan of conservation and development is clear that it wants to encourage additional housing options, additional, multifamily. It talks about the future land use plan presented in the plan of conservation development, identifies these parcels for both light industrial and village density residential, which includes multifamily homes. The POCD calls for expanding housing options within the town and recommends zoning regulations that are less restrictive for multifamily development. The future regional form map within the POCD also identifies the subject parcels as growth areas that can accommodate the bulk of future growth. And the POCD prioritizes development within areas serviced by public utilities. These parcels meet that definition. They fit in that box. And we could certainly understand the concern if how this could potentially grow and expand beyond what we're proposing. But the beauty of this type of application is it's entirely within the control of this commission. And I think the residents have reminded you of that. but it's also, I take pride that our applications are, they come from a place of sound placemaking and using appropriate planning methodologies to allow and encourage economic development, which is part of the guiding goals and objectives of this commission, but to do so in a way that can provide some protection for the surrounding communities. We've tried to be responsive to that. We've increased the buffer requirements from residential structures, and I'd say that I think we actually have, I know there was concern about separation from structures themselves. We wanted to maximize that, but we're also proposing, 300-foot buffers from the property lines themselves, at least with our current master plan. So if the commission feels strongly about specific components of what's being proposed, we'd certainly like an opportunity to discuss those in more detail, I guess, at this time, to see if there are other things that we could add to this regulation that could provide those protection measures. Because again, we believe that projects improve based on feedback. And I think whatever we can do as part of this, as part of the future and ongoing dialogue, we think can make a better opportunity for the town of Watertown.
Thanks. Thank you. Okay. All right. Commission members, this is, we're on the record. It's important that we ask our questions now. We're at a public hearing. So if anybody has, and this commission has questions, I would encourage you to ask those questions now to the commission, to the applicant. Okay. Please go ahead. Ask.
I have a question. Yep. Have you considered other properties like was suggested before by Route 8?
I believe that other property is, or at least was, under contract to be developed by a different applicant, a different developer. I believe there may even have been some informal meetings with the Wetlands Commission, but I'm not sure of the current status. Our clients found this property as available at the time, and it was something that they wanted to pursue. But I don't know if that other property is still available or if it's still under contract with a different party.
Thank you.
Do you know, Mark?
That property was, just reiterating what Kevin said, that property was under discussion for development.